The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is brought to you by BASF Canada and Invigor Hybrid Canola.
Hi, Amber Bell here with Real Agriculture. I am standing here today with Ian Epp, who is on the Canola Council of Canada, and we're doing a canola school speaking about scouting for disease at swath timing, which from the field behind us, you can see that we're about to start swathing pretty quick here. So welcome, Ian. It's fantastic to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so we're going to be talking about diseases. And let's just jump right into it. So what are some of the diseases that you should be scouting for at swathing?
So there's a couple. It used to be the big three diseases we talk about canola. Now we have verticillium kind of added into the mix, so the big four. So the big four, I'll do it actually as we go through the plant. You pull out your plant and you're scouting. The first plant thing you want to check for is clubroot. Clubroot's going to be below the soil surface. You want to look at the roots and you want to see if there's any galls, any weird tubers, anything going on. So that's the first thing. So anytime you're looking for diseases, first always pull the plant out of the dirt. All right, so that's clubroot. This one doesn't have any clubroot. Then we're going to start cutting and we're going to cut the stem. I like starting a little lower and starting just slowly cutting a little off the top as you work your way up. And we're looking at the color of the stem in there. If there's any black, we're probably going to see some blackleg. We could also be seeing some verticillium in there. So it's important to be able to try to tell the difference. But again, blackleg into sclerotinia. Verticillium being soil burn usually comes from the roots. So I'd start cutting a little lower. And if it's really low, it's more likely to be verticillium. And start cutting your way up. As we get this pie-shaped black going on as we get a little bit higher up, that could be blackleg. This one has just an inkling of it, but not a whole lot of blackleg. So then we've covered three of our diseases. The last one is sclerotinia. Sclerotinia is above ground, so we're looking at the stems, usually the main stem, and then we're going to look here and do we see any sclerotinia lesions, some premature whitening, any lesions? We'll see some deadening or some bleaching happening here if we have sclerotinia. And we can open it up and see those sclerotia bodies with kind of the black sclerotia bodies. So those are the big diseases to be looking for. That's kind of the four diseases. So as we're going through the plant, you want to pull a number of plants throughout the field. Swathing timing is a great timing to do it. And you know, if you are running a swather or spraying, you maybe you're playing pre-harvest glyphosate on your canola, that's a great time to be checking different parts. So have your handy dandy clippers with you, and just a number of times in the field, get out and do that assessment on a number of plants and try to figure out what diseases you have. Maybe you don't have any diseases, or which ones, and then from there we can kind of figure out, are they causing us yield loss? It's too late for this year, right? We're at swath timing. It's the yield is set for this year, but this doesn't make different management decisions for next year. We can always learn. You're probably going to be buying canola seed for next year here fairly quick. So if you have no problems, you know, what you're doing is currently working. If you have a big blackleg problem coming up, and blackleg can be pretty sneaky, it's pretty common to find fields with 5 or 10% yield loss, then maybe that's something we want to be considering as we're planning for next year.
Okay, and at what point should you be deciding whether or not you should be sending samples to a lab?
Yeah, so in general, if you find diseases and you're not quite sure, sending samples to a lab is always a good choice. For things like blackleg, you can find out, confirm it is blackleg. The symptoms are can be pretty easy, but sometimes it's sneaky, and sometimes you'll see multiple diseases. So figure out if it's blackleg. You can also do race testing with blacklegs. You can find out specifically what race of blacklegs in your field, and then knowing that, you can pick a variety that next time you grow canola on that field will be better resistant at the races you have specifically. So you can gain more information than you can from the field. Verticillium, I would always send it to the lab.
Okay.
There's visual symptoms, but because you're never quite sure, it's still a new disease, and you probably see some blackleg with it, sending it to the lab, just confirm it is verticillium. And then sclerotinia you're probably pretty good on. And for clubroot, just confirming that it is clubroot. There are some other things that do cause little bumps or weird things on the roots. The more plants you look at, you'll find all sorts of weird things. Hybridization nodules, these little circles, can look like the beginnings of a little bit of clubroot, but it's not. So if in doubt, sending it away to lab is a cost-effective, it's a cheap way to figure out that it is actually this disease. Especially if you're going to make an important management decision for the next year based on that. It's a little, just making sure is always a good idea.
Right, and I guess speaking of management decisions, like when you're going for a resistance package, do you have any recommendations for how a grower might choose their resistance package? Like what's going to be the most important depending on which diseases you're seeing?
Yeah, so that's the key thing. Doing disease scouting now, you find out what diseases you maybe have, and then you can pick which ones are the most important. When you're picking your canola variety, there's so many different traits you can choose from, right? And not every variety is going to have all of the traits, and some, so I would pick probably, if you have a blackleg problem, let's deal with that. That's a highly manageable one, and like I said, it's easy to lose 5 or 10%. You see a lot of fields that are regularly rating as a number 2 on the blackleg scale, which is 10% yield loss. It's sneaky. You might not see it from the road, but 10% is a massive yield loss. So versus picking the top, maybe the top yielding variety, if you have one that for sure takes good control of your blackleg, that might be the most important decision. If you have no blackleg in your field or your stems are clean, whatever your blackleg management program is good, and maybe then it is a different one. Clubroot is a great one to have. Most varieties these days are getting to be clubroot resistant. In Saskatchewan here, I'm not really picky on what kind of clubroot resistance, as long as you have clubroot resistance, and then monitoring again to make sure that the clubroot resistance is working. If you see a resistant variety with galls forming on it, you have a problem. But again, just picking the right, the biggest yield limiting factor in your field or on your farm, right? And that changes region to region, it changes farm to farm. Sometimes it changes year to year, but things like blackleg and clubroot have a lot of management decisions that you can do to kind of make a better decision for next year.
Right. And then when it comes to management decisions, so let's say you've scouted your field, you have blackleg and clubroot. How much of a concern is it when you go to a field that's like 2 miles out, right? If you're going to be picking your seed package, should you be considering what you have in one field even though it's a couple miles away?
Yeah, for clubroot, if you have clubroot on one spot on the farm, there's a pretty good chance you might have clubroot on other fields. So for sure, if you see clubroot, you want to be growing clubroot resistant variety. And if you see it breaking down, you might be good to having different clubroot resistant varieties on the farm. In general, just having clubroot resistant varieties on the farm is key. For blackleg, you could see differences from field to field. And right, we're assessing blackleg in this field. This field's not going to be canola next year. It's going to be a field down the road. But if you have a similar cropping history, if you've grown the same types of varieties over and over, the blackleg races that are happening in this field, there's a pretty good chance they'll be the similar races in that field. Not a perfect solution, but it can give you a bit of an insight on what next year might look like. You can also go on, especially on a tighter rotation, if you go to a field that's going to be canola next year, and you can still find residue from the last canola crop, pretty good chance you have higher risk for blackleg, but you can also collect those old samples, those woody samples, and you can take them to the lab, and then you can find out, get race tested and find out, oh, this is exactly the blackleg races that are there from last year, and then you can pick the right variety. So using an adjacent field or a different field on the farm as a proxy can work, or going directly to the source works. Either way, depending on if those old stems are still around.
That's great. And I guess that would come into like record management as well. You want to be keeping records over the years on each field.
Often the fields with the biggest blackleg problems have grown the same variety over and over. Well, all the varieties are resistant, but that resistance erodes over time. So if you're growing a same variety year after year, or one with the same blackleg gene, there's a higher chance you're going to have a big blackleg problem. Okay,
so not only should we be doing crop rotations, but we should also be doing variety rotations.
Yeah, and again, not just variety rotations, but changing the R gene, which if you know what the variety has in R gene, you can then pick a variety with a different R gene, and that will help keep the blackleg at a minimum.
That's great. Well, do you have any words of encouragement for producers as we go into our swathing season?
As we get into winter extension season, quite often I get questions on what variety would I grow, or somebody will say, what variety do you grow on your farm, wanting to know, and that's great. But the key thing is now, if we have more information from this fall on blackleg is this, or I have this sclerotinia, or I have clubroot, or whatever. The more information we can grab now this fall, as we go through the winter decision-making process, we kind of set up the next year's crop. The more information we have, the better decisions we can make. So take the time now. It doesn't take very long. Every, half an hour or something, hop out of the swather, hop out of the sprayer, cut 20 plants, quickly look at them. It takes 5 minutes, and then you have an idea of what to do for next year.
And you can use it as an excuse to stretch your legs.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. And that was Ian Epp on Real Agriculture.